The League of Women Voters of Greater Tucson has been dedicated to encouraging informed and active participation in government in Greater Tucson for 82 years. As part of our core mission, the facilitation of free, neutral, and fair forums for candidates for elected office has always been something we have been dedicated to guaranteeing. I would like to thank the YWCA for co-hosting and hosting us here tonight. I would also like to thank Sue DeArmond and Barbara Becker for organizing this forum. I would like to thank the candidates for your participation here tonight. I would like to thank our moderator, Sherry Springer, and in whose capable hands I will leave you in a moment. And I would especially like to thank you for coming tonight, for your interest in this free and open contest of ideas that is so central to our democratic system. As Leanne said, this will be recorded and will be available on the League of Women Voters website in case you'd like to share it with friends and neighbors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you all again for attending this very important forum, and thank you very much to the candidates for your participation. I have to ditto the thank yous. The purpose of this forum is to provide an opportunity for attendees to learn a little bit about each of the candidates before you cast your vote. We are thus trying to set a climate that is comfortable for each candidate to express his or her positions. This is a nonpartisan election. All candidates on the ballot have been invited and all of them are present. So once again, thanks for being here. Per the agreed upon structure of this forum, each candidate will start with a 90-second opening statement and end with a 60-second closing statement. Each candidate will also have 60 seconds to respond to the questions asked during the forum. Our timekeeper, Sue, will hold up signs notifying the candidates when time is up. She'll give you a 30-second. Is it a 30-second and a stop or a 30-second and 15-second? 30-second and a stop. A warning. Just to ensure that everyone here has equal time and it's fair to all of our candidates, we will be pretty strict with those timekeeping. Questions for the candidates can be written on the note cards, and pencils on your chairs. Please keep each question to one question on each card. Barbara and her helper will help gather those questions and hand them to our card sorters. In the interest of time for the forum, please understand that we may not get to every question. It doesn't mean that any question is less or more important. We are trying to keep to a time limit. One other reminder, be sure your cell phones are silenced, please. We ask that the audience show respect to the candidates by not commenting or disrespecting any of our candidates. Please refrain from clapping, booing, or any other acknowledgments of answers until the end of the forum. Shall we begin? Brianna Chilius, would you like to start with your opening statement?
Thank you so much. Is this loud enough? I don't know if I need to. I have a pretty loud voice, so I think this was close enough. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Brianna Chilius, and I like to go by Brie like the baking cheese, and I am one of the running candidates for the Tucson Governing School Board for Tucson, Arizona. I'm currently a children's librarian over at the Quincy Douglas Library. Prior to that, I was a TUSD school library assistant, so I am a former TUSD employee, and within my time, I was able to do a lot for my kids. You'll probably notice that I'll say my kids a lot, so because that's the type of relationship I had with my students as their elementary school librarian. And I'm very happy to be here, and I am running because really just it's for my kids. Just I've seen a lot of deficiencies, and just it's really harming them for them to not have a librarian, which we all know that librarians are really important, amongst other issues that are pressing and concerning to community members. So that's why I'm here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Jennifer Ekstrom.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jennifer Ekstrom. I am a mom, a community leader, and I'm running to bridge inequity gaps. I was born and raised in the city of South Tucson. I'm a lifelong TUSD resident. And at the age of 18, I was elected to the South Tucson City Council, where I served for 18 years, 5 of those as mayor. And when I left South Tucson, it was to get married and to start my family. And so now I'm back to run for TUSD because I believe that we need parents and community leaders who believe in the public education system. Thank you.
Thank you. Luis Armando Gonzalez.
Good evening. And I'd like to first thank the League of Women Voters and the YWCA for putting this forum together. I think it's extremely important that the voters understand who their candidates are. I know the differences between them and make those decisions that are informed. I've lived in Tucson all of my life. I'm a proud graduate of Tucson High School. I'm a product of the Tucson Public Schools. I'm very, very much invested in the public school system because now I have grandkids in the system. I have nieces and nephews, some of which have graduated from the public schools and are also currently attending. I served in the Arizona State Senate for 4 terms. I have the experience that I think TUSD needs in terms of the lobbying efforts that need to be done to bring back some of the funding that's been lost over the years. I know that process, I know it well, and I have a number of contacts still in the state legislature. I also served in the Pima College Board of Governors for 1 term. Actually, it was 2 years, filling out a term that was left open by my good friend Marty Cortez, who is in the audience today. I also have a lot of experience in administrative work. Most of my work has been in the executive positions areas, and I think I'm going to stop there. But I just want to say, to end it, I also served as the city manager for the city of South Tucson in 2013.
Thank you. Val Romero.
Again, thanks for having this venue, League of Women Voters. Real quick, my name is Val Romero. I am a Tucson native. I am a father. I am a grandfather of 2. I'm a business owner. I'm very involved with the community as far as whether it be different networking organizations or fundraising for different local charities within our community. Community is very, very important to me. And some of the things that I see in our current climate, we need leadership changes in a lot of different spaces. Schools is kind of right there, the very, very important part. What it seems like to me as I've gotten into this, the education of kids, our students, has kind of been, that's being hurt right here. When 62% of your 3rd and 4th graders are not reading at school at grade level, we have a problem in our district. And that's a foundation that we can't build our youth on going into grade school, high school, and then if they go on to trades, because that also affects the people that are coming out of our schooling system, also affect the workforce in our future. So it's more than just wanting to do this to do it. I want to make a difference. And again, my name is Val Romero. Thank you.
Thank you. William Soland.
Thank you very much. I do want to thank the League of Women Voters, and I want to thank the YWCA for hosting. I also want to thank everyone who came out tonight. I'm so happy to see so many people here to learn about the candidates. My name is William R. Soland. I am an attorney, a father, and a geek. I'm running to dismantle the school-to-prison pipeline, to protect our most vulnerable students, and to promote public education. As a public defender, I am all too familiar with what can happen when children get caught up in our criminal punishment system. Increased policing at schools and reactionary discipline can lead students into suspension, expulsion, and incarceration. We need to reduce our reliance on armed officers and hard security and build up TUSD's social safety network. We need to create an environment where every student has a chance to succeed. As a father, I care deeply about all TUSD students. Our children's safety and bodily autonomy cannot be taken for granted. I see other states banning books, banning teaching gender issues, banning honest history. The Arizona Attorney General wants to resurrect a zombie law from the early 1900s to criminalize anyone involved in an abortion. As a district, we need to protect our children and give them the space to thrive, to be the best humans that they can be. And as a geek, I love learning. I know learning can be fun. I'm a proud public school grad and dad. The governor wants to give away taxpayer dollars to fund private schools, schools that are free to discriminate, schools where there is no accountability. We need to stand up at the local level and protect our public schools. I'm here tonight to earn your vote and a seat on the TUSD governing board. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca Zapien.
Hi, thank you for having us. Thank you for having me. My name is Rebecca Sapien. I'm currently a teacher educator at the University of Arizona. That means that I work with people who want to become certified teachers. I'm in schools every day with students, with teachers who are already in our classrooms mentoring our students. I'm a third-generation teacher. I'm a parent of TUSD students, and I'm also a graduate of TUSD. I want to run for a seat at the TUSD school board because I think the voice of teachers and educators is highly missing. Because of the current state of education across the country, but especially in Arizona, I feel like that part of advocacy for the profession is something that deeply, deeply can make a difference as to how policy is made, and the benefits of changing that impacts the students, the workforce, and the larger community. Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to tonight. I'm super nervous, so thank you.
Thank you. We've had a couple of late arrivals, so I just want to remind the few people that have come in, there are cards and pencils on your chairs. If you have a question for the candidate, please feel free to write it down. One question per card, please. Barbara and her helpers will grab that from you, and please write clearly. All right, let's get going. Our first question. What do you believe is the number one concern for our public schools today? Ms. Ekstrom.
I believe the number one concerns for our public schools today, and especially in TUSD, is teacher and staff retention and pay. Unfortunately, we are 50th in teacher pay for the state of Arizona, and that is just not acceptable. So we need to find a way in our budget to pay our staff and teachers more. We also need a robust benefits package that includes health plans. We need to listen to what teachers need in order to retain them. We need to honor and respect them. And we need to utilize the Pathways to Teaching program that the University of Arizona has. And we also need to provide meaningful professional development for teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez.
I think there are so many issues that are relevant, but if I had to pick one, it would be to reduce the achievement gap of students. Right now in the school system, the data shows that as you go through the lower levels, the levels of achievement begin to decline. At the end of the 6th and 8th grade, going into high school, the students at TUSD, 28% of them are below grade level. So this is where I think we need to start looking at first. We need to look at teacher quality. We need to look at the unprofessional working environment of teachers, the lack of teacher diversity in the classrooms. We need to take a look at uniform disabilities and the discipline policies that are ongoing at the district. And we need a much better work environment. And we need to take those teachers that are better qualified with the most experience and assign them to those schools that have the best need.
Thank you. Mr. Romero.
Yes, it's a very complex as far as what needs to be done. There's a lot of things that need to be done. K through 3, as far as reading at grade level, give these kids a strong foundation is extremely important. With that, we need to get better teachers, retain our good teachers, be able to recruit good teachers for our students so that we can get to those levels for our children. I think our focus should be focused around the kids. How are we going to make public school for our children better? When Arizona in public schools is 50 out of 50 across the whole United States, we've got a bigger problem. Yes, we have teacher issues, but how do we fix that? The culture within the TUSD, administration, it's not very, very positive from what I've been told and hearing about that. There's a lot of things that need to happen, but I think we need to focus on our kids first. If we focus on our kids first, we'll fix a lot of these other problems.
Thank you. Mr. Soland.
Thank you very much. I would say that the number one problem facing our schools is the ability to protect our students and give them a nurturing environment in which they can thrive. I think a big part of that is what Ms. Ekstrom mentioned about teacher and staff retention. I think a big part of that is what Mr. Gonzalez mentioned about making sure that we have policies that can benefit all children, not just one group or another. For me, in my life, I think it's very important that as many of our students from different backgrounds can see themselves and can understand that their lives are valid. And so the books kids are reading in the classroom matter, but we need to make sure we have good teachers, social workers, counselors, librarians, and that our schools are fully staffed. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Zapien.
It's really, as a person who's in schools all the time and works with teachers, it's really hard to pinpoint one thing because all the things that people mentioned are deeply tied together. So I would say probably the biggest issue is the constant attack on public education, the defunding, which impacts, the supplies that people have in their classrooms, the amount of teachers that are leaving the profession, the resources that are in our schools. So I'm going to go with a really big umbrella, and that is attack on public education and lack of funding that's tied to it.
Thank you. Ms. Chilius.
Thank you so much. So I would say we really need to address the teacher shortage. So it's not really a teacher shortage, it's more of a salary shortage because we're not equitably paying our teachers what they are paying comparatively in other districts. So I would kind of focus more on just addressing the needs of the teachers first. But then in the meantime, which was also made evident in the last board meeting that happened not too long ago, there are a lot of our subs that are saying that they need to be taken care of, okay? The Arizona State retirement system, that's one of them. And that'll be a big game changer to keep them in the system as well as retain them. So until we reach this, the vacancies, fill those vacancies, we need to work really well with our subs. So that's another thing, and also mandating a multicultural curriculum, because we cannot ignore the reality of the world that we're living in. The world is changing. So we need to mandate a multicultural curriculum that reaches and needs and fulfills the diverse and inclusion and equitable needs of our diverse student population. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. What will your top 3 priorities be if elected? Mr. Gonzalez.
Number 1, reduce achievement gap. 2, teacher retention and recruitment. Number 3, take a good hard look at the policy of discipline in the schools. We need to make sure that one of the items that we look at is that our budget is put in the right places where the biggest need is. Those are my 3 top priorities.
Thank you. Mr. Romero.
Students is priority number 1, getting them to reading, writing at grade level, K through 3. That's huge, and keep repeating it over and over again. So by the time you leave here, I think he's about students. Retention of teachers is a huge issue. Everyone here is going to be saying that thing here right now. We have a problem paying our teachers. Budgetary, I was reading something where because of the DSEG, the district pays $63 million a year. $63 million can pay for a lot of teachers. We need to make sure we also focus on the DSEG, that we get this from underneath us for the last 48 years so we can be done. Let's follow, let's comply, and make sure we have a board that's watching the DSEG so we don't fall back to going back to the courts and having to go through this again and save some money.
Thank you. Mr. Soland.
Thank you very much. Number 1, I think we need to reduce our reliance on hard security and armed security officers in our schools. It doesn't help prevent mass shootings. What it does do is it helps move things towards criminalization when things should be done through regular school discipline. The second thing we need to do is to support our teachers, staffs, and substitutes. We need to make sure that they are all having a seat at the table. Right now, our substitutes are not able to form a collective bargaining unit. We need to change that. We need to make sure our teachers are compensated properly. The third thing is to protect student privacy. Right now the district has a rule that teachers cannot tell law enforcement if they think that a student is not a citizen or has an immigration issue. I think we need to have the same thing with regards to reproductive health and with regards to gender identity issues.
Thank you. Ms. Sapien.
The three top things I do think are teacher retention. However, I would also like to put into the umbrella of that is respecting the profession. So that means allowing teachers to do their jobs in ways that are allowing for kids to have meaningful learning experiences. I think we don't only have an issue of teacher pay and teacher shortage, but people don't want to stay in the profession, and we need to look at that in really concrete and deep ways. The other thing that I would like to do is meaningful learning experiences for kids. So looking at pedagogical choices within the district so that families choose TUSD first, and an equitable distribution of resources within the district so that schools are more equitable across the district.
Thank you. Ms. Chilius.
Thank you so much. So I would love to encompass all of this within the promise and actions moving forward towards within the DSEG court orders within the district, working towards the post-unitary status plan. So number one, again, as the fellow candidates had mentioned, we're going to be talking about just student the teacher to student ratio, and it is extremely high. So we need to be able to work with our teachers, our educators, and our students, in addition to the subs, and on the conversation of what we need to have done. Number two, we need to incorporate an anti-racist training lens within applying the diversity and equity and inclusion training and services, because we cannot, again, ignore the realities of the world that we live in. We have a very diverse student population. And number three, of course, what's dear and near to my heart, are having certified school librarians. Since 2014, section IJK, specifically within the policy, does not or has not fulfilled the policies enacted. So it would be my pleasure to work on that issue, because we need librarians.
Thank you. Ms. Ekstrom.
My top three priorities are, of course, staff and teacher retention. We need to figure out why our teachers are staying, and we need to figure out a way to bring new teachers in. So I would really like to work on that. We need to definitely bridge the inequity gaps in our community and our lower socioeconomic schools. A lot of those schools still don't have music, PE, and art. That needs to be at every school. And the third thing is school safety. There is a school safety plan for TUSD, but not every school follows it. So there needs to be a school safety plan across the board that is told to parents and that everybody in the community understands, and that includes the police department. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. How does your experience best qualify you to be on the TUSD school board? Mr. Romero.
So these last, I don't remember how many years are going on, 17, 18 years I've been in business for myself. So my mind works that way as a business. So in everything that I do, it is kind of like running a business. So being part of the governing board, I would look at it as running a business. Employees, you have to deal with them in a business. A budget, you need to deal with those in a business. If teachers leave, or why did they leave? We need exit interviews. We need a lot of different things like we would do in a business to implement into the district. Some of the things is like even with HR. I was reading something the other day that from the time of an application to come in before they start their job, it can take up to 11 weeks for the TUSD district to go through that. If someone's looking for a position, they've already found somebody else by that 11 weeks. So there's a lot of things we need to choose, make it work more like a profitable business.
Thank you. Mr. Solon.
Thank you. Since I graduated from law school, I've spent my entire career representing Arizonans' most vulnerable citizens. I started in Flagstaff, Arizona with DNA People's Legal Services, representing people at or near the poverty line. Some of them were being evicted. Some of them were victims of domestic violence. Some of them couldn't get public benefits they really dearly needed to survive. Now, at the Pima County Public Defender's Office, I represent people who have no one else to speak for them. Again, these are people who would be crushed by the system if there weren't public defenders like me to stand up for them. I think we need someone like me who understands what some of our most vulnerable people are going through to fight for our students, to fight for our parents, and to fight for our schools. I think legal guidance will be necessary if the school district needs to take on the state legislature as the state legislature continues to try to dismantle our public schools.
Thank you. Ms. Zapien.
Well, I would say that I'm a teacher, so I would like to do this work because I have been doing this work, and I will continue whether I get a seat or not at the table. For me, families, teachers, everybody who helps run a school, I consider them my colleagues. I see their work. I see it not only in TUSD, but I see it across all the major school districts in Tucson, which allows me to see what other districts are doing and what TUSD may not be doing. I think that we have a really resourceful community, and my ability to work with teachers and families allows me to really consider their experiences, and I'd like a seat at the board in order to bring that to the table.
Thank you. Ms. Chilius.
Thank you so much. I would say just having firsthand experience as a former TUSD employee, working with my kids, I was able to witness firsthand, as well as be in conversation, engaging in conversations with my former educators, my former teacher colleagues, about the existing very depleting systemic issues that they face, as well as their students are facing. So I've worked, in addition to the work that I bring now over to the public library, I am in contact with marginalized, disenfranchised communities, students who are not having their needs met. So I bring that first eye introspectively, that the experience, as well as having worked with kids. It's outside of the district. I do agree with what Mr. Romero had stated about treating it as a business plan, as a profitable business. However, I like to see it as just a way to holistically make approaches if we're able to achieve certain goals that the district has, and what community members are looking for towards the district, towards the governing board to achieve and succeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ekstrom.
My whole life has been about service, and I want to continue that service. I know how to build relationships. I've worked in the public sector for over 25 years. I have a financial background dealing with $1 million budgets. I had to do that in my work with Pima County. I am a community builder, and I believe that my experience will help me start day one. I will have a small learning curve, but it won't be that small. So I believe that my experience on being the mayor and on the city council of the city of South Tucson makes me a good candidate for the TUSD governing board.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez.
Well, I'm the kind of guy who's going to hit the pavement running. You know, you're not going to need to go to an OJT training program with me. I know parliamentary procedure very well. I served in the state legislature. I know how laws are done. I know how to change them. I understand the lobbying process, and I can help there. I'll tell you what, I've been in a school board, and I know exactly what it is that we need to do to create a pipeline for students to go in through to the higher institutions of higher learning. We need to make sure that we have a good program that does that. You know, I know Title 15 that governs the public schools, and I know, as I said, parliamentary procedure pretty well. So I'm not going to be a new guy on the board. I'm going to have the experience that you need.
Thank you. I do have a very quick reminder to address your questions to all of the candidates, not to one specific, please. Next question. Do you believe that TUSD is teaching critical race theory? Mr. Solon.
Critical race theory is a law school level elective. It is a legal framework for viewing how racism has worked in the United States for generations. No one's teaching critical race theory to high schoolers any more than they're teaching calculus to our kindergartners. What we need to make sure is that our students are learning real American history, not American history with all the rough parts filed off. Students need to be learning about race in its proper context. They need to learn about Martin Luther King. They need to learn about what happened to Indigenous people and what continues to this day to happen to Indigenous people in this country. We need to keep these things on the forefront and not hide them from our students so that they can be good citizens when they grow up. But no one's teaching critical race theory in Tucson Unified School District.
Thank you. Ms. Zapien?
Quick answer is no. And I also think that it's become coded language for attacks on public school and what our kids learn. So Will talked about the actual definition of CRT, and I think what people are trying to do is do away with what's little is left of culturally relevant curriculums that are in our school. I do think that it's our responsibility to teach historical, accurate, reflective histories of who we are, especially in a town like Tucson that is predominantly Indigenous, brown, Black. And no, I don't think that we teach CRT.
Thank you. Ms. Chilius?
Thank you so much. I just want to be careful around the language because as my fellow candidates had mentioned, Mr. Solon and Ms. Zapien, that it's not being taught. However, we do really need to acknowledge the reality of the world that we live in. And I'm going to sound like a broken record because I don't think a lot of people understand that the world, racially, ethnically, politically, socioeconomically, it's changing. So we need to be able to reflect that in the curriculum-based framework with the anti-bias framework that we are able to incorporate all of these diverse needs. And speaking as a public librarian, seeing the book bans that are coming up because we are too afraid to talk about the actual historical events, the nuances, and the contextual information taught to our children, it's doing a detriment. It's doing a disservice to our children. So I would say the answer to your question, no, but I really do implore that we have a mandated multicultural curriculum that gives respects and honors and validates and represents the student population and the reality that we live in. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Ekstrom?
No, TUSD is not teaching critical race theory. And I have to agree with my fellow candidates that have already spoken. We need to have relevant, culturally relevant history taught to our students. And this starts at kindergarten. This is something that we can totally implement and teach our young kids what Tucson is about. We are a community of Indigenous people, of Latino people, of Black people. We all need to have that taught to our children. That's the world that we're living in.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez?
Thank you. Critical race theory is founded on the premise that the schools are teaching hate. And I don't know of any one school at TUSD that teaches hate or race hate at all. I don't know of one. I don't think there is one. But I believe that every student has a right to learn about their own culture, their own history, their own language, and they need to know, if they're a person of color, they need to know their own self-identity. And I think that's what we need to focus on. And I don't see anything wrong with doing that. It doesn't matter what grade it is.
Thank you. Mr. Romero?
So I guess here's where I'll be different, and yes would be the answer. Back in February 13th of this year, 2022, in the Arizona Free News, the headline was, Arizona educators pledge to teach critical race theory regardless of law or parental consent. This was signed by different teachers throughout the whole state of Arizona, and they have over 60 teachers that are on this list from Tucson. So, not saying it's the rule, but there is the exception that there is CRT in our schools in our district.
Thank you. Next question. What will you advocate to be done on our campuses to keep students and staff safe from violence, bullying, and harassment? Ms. Zapien?
I would like TUSD to adopt across the board from pre-K to 12th grade, a transformative justice model in all of its framework, from issues having to do with discipline to truancy, to all the things that are falling under school safety. I also do not believe that schools should be spaces for police to be present, just like they shouldn't be for customs agents, border patrol, any type of policing. And I would like to see things like social workers, counselors, and so on be put in place so that people feel like they have people to go to, but not as placeholders for policing in practice.
Thank you. Ms. Chilius.
Thank you so much. I'm going to probably mirror just a small bit of what Ms. Sapien had mentioned. So I'd really like to keep in mind of just what the DSEC order was stated and following those orders in order to have accountability and transparency with our community members. So I'd like to say that it's going to be an unpopular opinion, but I do not agree with school resource officers on campus. I believe if we should replace them according to the allocation, the budget allocation for what the school really needs, mental health specialists to be present in order to do check-ins, proper check-ins and checking in on the students. That'll be able to fulfill the goals within the plan, and that'll be a proper, appropriate use of those allocations within the DSEC, the funds from the DSEC case order. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ekstrom.
As I stated before, I think each school needs an across-the-board understanding of what the safety plan is, and that includes parents. On the first day of school at my daughter's school, parents weren't able to take their kindergartners to their door that day, while other schools were doing that. So there is not a communication what the school safety plan is for TUSD. I don't believe in SRO officers either. They are not trained to deal with children and their needs. We need more counselors and social workers. But with that being said, we need to provide them with the tools that they need to get their job done. We also need to utilize our community liaisons more. They are the ones that go out and check on students who have been absent for long periods of time. They need to have access to programs in our community that they can help these families with whatever they may need: rental assistance, utility assistance, getting food, those types of things.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez.
Well, if you look at the TUSD budget right now for 2023, you'll find that there isn't enough money for monitors in the schools. You cannot have one monitor for every 600 students. It just simply doesn't work. So we got to look at that. We got to make sure that the disciplinary policies are followed equitably across the district, and you don't have all these peaks and valleys where everybody decides to do whatever the heck they want, and nobody else takes care of it. You got to stop this whole idea of allowing students to be bullying other students. If you look at the data of the surveys that have been done at TUSD, you're going to find out that the students are saying that there's a lot of bullying going on while the teachers are saying there isn't. That tells me that the teachers aren't watching, or maybe they have too many students in the classroom that they can't see what's going on. So we need to address those things, and we need to address them quickly once we get on that board.
Thank you. Mr. Romero.
Can you repeat the question again, please? Sorry.
That's okay. What will you advocate to be done on our campuses to keep students and staff safe from violence, bullying, and harassment?
Again, going back to the different scenarios that we have, Arizona being 50 out of 50 as far as public schools, student safety, we're 45 out of 50. So safety has got to be a huge issue for our students, and we with events that have happened in different schools, Uvalde, for example. I know that'll kind of come on up. And yes, it's not ideal to have armed police officers in schools. If it's going to protect our children, is it bad to have them with our schools, with other counselors that can help them on out? One of the other things that we're lowest on is our student to counselor ratio. We're 716 to 1 student. The average is 250 to 1. So we don't have a lot of the resources we need, and then if we don't address a lot of these issues, School safety hopefully will never reach to a point that happened in Texas, but we need to make sure we got to do whatever we have to do to protect our children when they're in those walls.
Thank you. Mr. Soland.
On the point of Uvalde, there were over 100 police officers at that school, many of them school district safety officers who knew the school, who knew the district, who knew the safety plan, and it took them hours to stop the killing. SSOs and SROs do not stop mass shootings. What they do is they make our kids feel like criminals. I agree with Ms. Apien, with Ms. Chilius, with Ms. Ekstrom, that we should not be relying on SROs and SSOs to keep our kids safe. We should not be relying on police. I agree with what Ms. Zapien said about a restorative justice model. If many of my clients had had someone actually look at the causes of their problems when they were in middle school or high school, I may never have met them because they might never have come before a judge. They might never have faced criminal charges. So we need to use counselors, social workers, community liaisons to reach out to kids to find out why they're misbehaving, find out why they're truant, find out why bullying is occurring. Thank you.
Next question. TUSD student achievement grossly lags state averages for almost every student group. The rest of the state greatly outperforms TUSD in educating low-income students. What should TUSD do to fix this? Ms. Chilius.
Thank you so much. So I recently did some research, and this is backed by the American Library Association, specifically the division of the American Association for School Libraries. They did a recent data report, and what it concluded, not to be a geek like Mr. Solon is, so it comprised of the need of having certified school librarians present. And there's a very interesting correlation that will happen there. Test scores, the standardized test scores that we are seeing now, the percentage, it's important. But having school certified librarians that will aid ELA and also ELA teachers and the dealing with the multiliteracies that's developing within just information literacy and things that go into play, developing and building that content knowledge will surprisingly help raise those test scores. So I believe just actually, and also acknowledging with a backed multicultural curriculum and pedagogy that we can infuse will really help our students achieve well in schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ekstrom.
I think we need to allow our teachers to teach to their students. They know what's best and how to teach their students and how each student learns from them. A lot of the times our teachers are teaching to tests, and we shouldn't be doing that. We also have to acknowledge that our students are dealing with a lot more than education and being in the classroom. They're dealing with not having access to food, not having access to housing. All those things need to be addressed. And if we start to look at our students in a whole picture and helping these families, we can help these students achieve more that way. And I also believe if we are going to address the academic gap, that we need to implement more tutors into our schools. We can get volunteers from our parents and from the community. These are things that need to be done now.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you. The achievement gap of students from one to the other is horrendous at TUSD. You have students that are 3 or 4 levels below where they should be. And one of the problems we're having is that we have teachers that are teaching out of their field. That means that teachers who are teaching out of their field are not qualified to teach what they're asking them to teach. You can't have a teacher that is a physical ed teacher teaching mathematics. It doesn't work. That's one of the problems we have to address. We have to make sure that the budget right now doesn't have any librarians in it at all. And we need to have certified librarians in the classrooms because this is where kids are going to learn to read. And if you don't know how to read, guys, you're not going to be ready for the next step in your life. There's a lot of things that we can do. I have a whole list of items that we can go through, but we don't have time to do it in 60 seconds.
Thank you. Mr. Romero.
So some of the things I like to do in my business, usually once a year, I kind of go reflect through the year. And simple question, what works, what doesn't? And if it doesn't, can it be fixed? or do we reevaluate how we do that? If it's working good, is there ways that we can improve things like that? Hearing these stats about where TUSD is, we should be looking at schools that are performing. What are they doing? What programs do they have? What things can we steal from them as their ideas to implement into our schools to receive these similar types of results? It's not necessarily all the time to rebuild the wheel. Sometimes you can borrow an old rim and put air in the tire and go from there. So I think we should look at programs that work that other school districts are using.
Thank you. Mr. Soland.
Yeah, I think that in terms of academic achievement, if we had fully staffed schools, then we would have greater academic achievement. And I heard what Mr. Gonzalez said about teachers teaching out of their field. We've also got long-term substitutes teaching classes that they have not had any training for and that they found out that they would need to teach on the first day of school. This is unacceptable. We need to fully staff our schools with librarians, counselors, teachers, bus drivers, all of these things. I don't think we can treat our students as a product. I don't think we can act like profit is the motive here. I think that we need to treat each student individually, and we can't do that if we have huge class sizes, if we don't have any school nurses, if we don't have any librarians, if we don't have any school counselors or enough of them to go around. So I think that that's the best way to address the achievement gap.
Thank you. Ms. Zapian.
I think the achievement gap is a little bit of coded language, kind of like CRT. At least that's what I hear from my point as a teacher. I do think that part of the issue is that we're not looking at the whole child. We're not looking at the profession as a whole. So teachers aren't able to do their jobs. They're guided by standardized tests. They're guided by a canned curriculum. They're not treated as professionals. Kids' needs are not being met, so when they show up to unimaginative learning, uninspiring learning, they don't want to do the work, or they may not be inspired to do the work. On top of that is all the constant conversation that we've had tonight about under-resourced, underperforming schools, which are one and the same. I bet you if you look at the schools that are doing well within TUSD, I bet you they have a higher level of certified staff. I bet you they are better resourced. I bet you they have a lot more participatory community members that show up and are able to do things, where in other schools they're not.
Thank you. Next question. What do you know about the issues substitute teachers face in the district? Ms. Ekstrom.
I know that the substitute teachers have had a long fight with TUSD administration. We need to fix that. Substitute teachers are the backbones to our schools and to our communities. We also need to utilize long-term subs. Long-term subs should be put into our classrooms and our schools. But what we do find is that long-term subs don't like to be at specific schools. So we need to figure out how we get subs into the schools that need them most. And that is, dealing with incentives. We need to incentivize these teachers to teach in the schools that need them.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez.
I know that substitute teachers are treated as second-class citizens at TUSD. I know that. I also know that the current budget doesn't have any money for substitute teachers. It's zeroed out. I know that. I read it. I'll tell you what. If it were up to me, I would allow substitute teachers to become recognized by the school board, allow them to organize and bargain for their own lot. I would allow them to bargain for and negotiate for better salaries and to be treated better as employees of the district and not be farming them out to third-party contractors who don't treat them well enough, that don't even give them good benefits. So I think that's a high priority for the new board coming in, and I think we need, and I agree with Ms. Ekstrom here, that it is a very high priority, and I'm glad to hear her say that because her colleagues haven't been very good at it.
Thank you. Mr. Romero.
So, what I've heard with subs as well, like I said, they're not treated equally with teachers. I understand they're not there every day, but, the pay-wise and benefits. I kind of look at it on this angle as a team. So if, say you have a football team, you have your starting quarterback, which is your head teacher. If that teacher goes out, you need your backup to come on in there that can run this class, these schools, and be able to rely on them and know that they don't get the paid money as their top quarterback, but they get a good amount to be the backup as needed in different areas. So I think giving them respect, I think we'll even bring in more teachers, given the option of positive benefits like a normal teacher in the district would be, could cause more substitute teachers to come in and fill those voids if they feel like they're part of a team and not just a body occupying a classroom.
Thank you. Mr. Soland.
Thank you very much. I've brought up subs a couple of times previously, and I agree with what Mr. Gonzalez said. They should be permitted to organize. They should be able to ask for the kind of training they need. I spoke with one substitute teacher who had to teach a class that involved some technology. It wasn't that she didn't understand technology in general, but she had never been trained on the exact program that she was being asked to do, and she was being asked to do this for a long-term assignment for more than a week. So this is not a sustainable model. This is not something that's benefiting our students. It's not benefiting our teachers. It's not benefiting our schools, and it certainly isn't benefiting the substitutes. So yes, again, I would allow them to have have benefits, retirement benefits, health benefits. I'd allow them to organize and to be competitive with salary.
Thank you. Ms. Zapian.
What I know about subs and the issues within TUSD is that basically all the things that everybody's named here. I also know that subs are in classrooms more often than not. So not only are they working alongside teachers who are on contract, they're highly specialized because they're also doing things in real time. They're building relationship from one day to the next with new classrooms, or maybe for 3 days with the same classroom. So I do think that they should have pay that is a livable wage, access to benefits, and able to participate in specialized professional development that allows them to do their job and teach the curriculum that is expected of them.
Thank you. Ms. Chilius.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to happily say that I'm so glad I took notes from yesterday's governing board meeting. So there were 3, if not 4, of the subs present within the TUSD, within the district, that explicitly and greatly articulated and presented to the board yesterday that they are not happy basically with the existing Arizona state retirement system, and that certain decisions were made without the board's vote, without the board's buy-in. It was made on just the superintendent's just rash, quick decision. So I would say that substitute teachers, they have the ball in their court right now. They are able to make comparable negotiations on deciding on like the status of their Arizona state retirement. Compensation is a really big one. And then also we need to support and really listen and hear our substitute teachers, because until we deal with a teacher shortage, salary shortage, we need to rely on them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. If elected, what is your position on working with bargaining groups? Mr. Romero.
Position with bargaining groups. So, unfamiliar with the term bargaining groups. I'm not sure if it's regarding like a third party, like for the subs. Is there a definition of what the bargaining group is, or do we something more specific, I guess?
Not on this card. And I'm not the one. Is there a definition of bargaining?
Would it be unions?
Groups that work for the district.
Okay. And the question again was, how would I react to them?
Correct. What would your position be on working with them if elected?
Okay. Well, on anything, you have to work with different people, throughout your whole life. And in business, if you've got a good relationship with different organizations, you have to be able to grow that relationship if it's a good one. And then I guess it's a matter of analyzing it as well. So just depending on what it is that we're bargaining for on certain things, the key things we still have to remember is, are we doing it for our students? Are we doing it for our teachers? Are we doing it for, the well-being and the education and getting TUSD to be a better school district?
Thank you. Mr. Soland.
When I hear bargaining groups, I think unions, and I would say unequivocally that I am a pro-union candidate. I have great respect for TEA. I believe, as I said a few moments ago, that I think that the substitutes should be allowed to form their own bargaining unit. And I think that this is a way to make sure that the people who are taking care of our children during the day have their needs heard. I think we should be hearing from unions at school board meetings. I know that most of the information that comes to the board comes from the superintendent. My parents met in library science school. My wife has a library science degree. You don't use one source of information to make decisions. You need to hear from multiple groups before you make an informed decision. That's my position.
Thank you. Ms. Sapien.
I support labor unions in organizing to create a better and stronger workforce. I do think that it's the responsibility of school board members, including hopefully myself, to listen to the unions as to what they want. They represent the working schools as a living entity, and so if I were to sit on the board, I would look to them to see what they think is best for the collective group, whether that's subs, teachers, whomever.
Thank you. Ms. Chilius.
Thank you so much. So I would say that unions or any governing entities working collaboratively, they will hold, in this case, school governing boards accountable. There needs to be a degree of transparency, and so we're not able to do our job if elected as a board member. I wouldn't be able to do my job if I am not working consciously and conscientiously with members of a union or any entity or any governing body that wants to better or have better improvements within the district. This is a district, or this is just an area or place where not just families live, but their students, their neighbors' kids. It's a communal thing. I would be echoing Mr. Solin's comments that I would be for union groups to work collaboratively together, because they'll be able to have a different lens and perspective needed to see what we can tackle the issues and make the district better for everyone across the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ekstrom.
I fully support unions and working with our teachers union. We need to listen to the groups that represent our employees and our workforce. And I'm also open to the idea of open bargaining. That way, more people, more employees understand what is actually going on during the bargaining process. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez.
Well, I've always been a supporter of labor organizations. I've been a union steward in some of my past private jobs as well. I think labor organizations have a right to bargain. I think they have a right to negotiate for better wages, better benefits, etc., etc. I have an open door policy. I'll listen to anybody that wants to bring issues to the table. As far as open bargaining is concerned, to me, that is another word for transparency. And the more transparent we are, the better off we're going to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. Vouchers. Why or why not? Mr. Soland.
Thank you. So right now, for anyone who doesn't know, the state legislature and Governor Ducey have passed a law that opens up what they call ESAs. To me, they sound like vouchers. I've heard some people get very upset when we call them vouchers. They basically give a certain amount of money to anyone who wants to use it to put towards a private school instead of a public school. What we are finding from the Arizona Department of Education is most of the people taking advantage of this were already sending their kids to private school in the first place. So what this is the way to funnel money out of public schools to undermine our already struggling public schools, and it's a giveaway to private schools. So vouchers, no.
Thank you. Ms. Zapien.
No. We already have so many systems in place that fund the ability for people to send their kids to public schools, whether it's tax credits, whether it's family contributions. So furthering If we want to talk about achievement gap, if we want to talk about good business models, the best business model is to fund our public schools, so no to vouchers.
Thank you. Ms. Chilius?
Thank you. That's very easy. No, because that's money that's taken away from public schools that needs allocation. Looking at the budget, the district needs a lot more of that money for certain deficiencies that are just hyper exposed right now, and that's made clear from our public hearing meetings within the governing board meetings. So that's a huge no for me.
Thank you. Ms. Ekstrom?
No. Right now, out of 11,000 applications that the state of Arizona has received, 8,000 of those applications are from families that have never attended public schools. So we're funneling money out of public schools into these programs. That's a $53 million loss to the state and public schools. So no.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez?
I'm generally opposed to the voucher system that is so open that we don't even know where the heck that money is going. But I will tell you this. There are organizations out there that are charter schools who take advantage of vouchers. Chicanos por la Causa has one. They serve students who are students mostly of color in disadvantaged areas. Project PEP has a technical high school that they deal with rural students. You have Nosotros, who is right smack in the middle of our barrio, who also has a charter school. So I think what we need to do is if we're going to be agreeing to a voucher system, we need to make sure that all those organizations that take advantage of it have some kind of an affirmative action program to make sure that they also serve the most needy.
Thank you. Mr. Romero?
So TUSD has a great opportunity here. Kind of like Mr. Gonzalez says, there should be accountability on how these funds are going. So yes, I am for this, and the opportunity is iron sharpens iron. And I talked to a lot of parents, and parents are excited about this, and they can't wait to take their kids out of public schools and put them somewhere else. So, depending on who you talk to, I guess you get different types of answers. By doing this, you have kids that are leaving the public school systems. Now our ratio, student-to-child ratio, is getting smaller and smaller because now you have less students in these types of areas. You also have quality of education. So if TUSD wants to be valuable in the community, they're going to have to work better at getting better educators for the students for education. So again, it gives parents an opportunity to find the best school that is good for their students and how they learn.
Thank you. Next question. TUSD is not a participant in dual enrollment. Why would you support or not support dual enrollment? Ms. Zapian?
Can you expand on what you mean by dual enrollment?
I'm sorry? Dual enrollment, I'm trying to read the first half of it, which might answer your question. Dual enrollment at Pima Community College is free college. And free college credits and save families thousands of dollars. TUSD is not a participant. Does that clarify it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Dual enrollment means a lot of things in education, so I just wanted to answer correctly.
Thank you.
I do think that currently one of the things I would like to see for TUSD is a growth in pedagogical choice. That also means content. Right now, things like the advanced college prep classes cost a lot of money. They're not always setting students up for success, but they are telling them that it's a way to save money in college. So I do think that a partnership that is strong with Pima Community College, where students can take advanced classes that may not be offered within their schools currently, is a great option to have. I think it needs to be well thought out and well planned.
Thank you. Ms. Chilius?
Thank you so much. I would be for it. And here's why. I think that public schools with local universities and community colleges, there's a beautiful thing called collaborations. And collaborations help to create unique solutions, unique forward innovative solutions to problems that may not otherwise be widely known or thought of. So looking at the collaborative efforts made would really help to prepare our students for the workforce, or whether that be local trade school training programs or just for their collegiate careers. I would say that it is necessary if we are to prepare the upcoming generation for that workforce. And so just being strategic and actually instituting that collaboration would really help our students to be more confident leaders if we were to build that bridge and not build that the divide that exists right now. Because if we're not thinking ahead of like how we can prepare our students in the upcoming generation.
Thank you. Ms. Ekstrom.
I agree with my colleagues, Ms. Chilias and Ms. Zapian. We do need to grow dual enrollment, and that includes Pima Community College and the University of Arizona. We need to work with our workforce partners as well, because higher education isn't for everyone. So we need to work with trade schools and workforce partners. We need to work with our businesses in our community, because we want to make sure that we're sending well-rounded students who are ready to go to work if that's what they choose to do, and well-rounded students who are ready to be in college if that's what they choose to do.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez.
Well, I understand that TUSD does participate in dual enrollment programs, probably not as large participation as it ought to be. But nonetheless, I'm a proponent, have been for a long time, of not only dual enrollment, but concurrent enrollment as well. Look, if we're going to create a pipeline for our students to go to college, we need to have concurrent enrollment. And I know that at Pima College, there is a program that focuses on that. In fact, there's one at Desert View that they work with the students at Sunnyside. It's called Upward Bound. And they do an excellent job of doing that, working with students. We ought to take that program and duplicate it at TUSD. So that's right, I'm very much in favor of dual enrollment.
Thank you. Mr. Romero.
Yes, I would also be in favor of dual enrollment. Just looking at it from one point of view, as far as the trade side within our community, being a business owner that is in the construction industry and knowing a lot of other businesses and trades, people out there, we don't have the trades that we need to sustain our community. We don't have electricians, we don't have plumbers. We have plumbers leaving, but no new plumbers coming on in. Electricians, drywallers. Kids today are not learning a lot of these trades. We have a lot of businesses that are willing to teach these people, to train them to do a skill. We just don't have a pool to pull those things from. If we could mention working with business community within the schools to find out how we can do that, because again, it's our future workforce that's going to be going here in our public schools, and it's going to reflect of how good we are as a community based on how well we taught or did not teach our youth, whether it be just in college or in trades.
Thank you. Mr. Soland.
So I guess it's unanimous we all like dual enrollment. The idea of having kids have the opportunity to have free college or to start with a trade school while they're still in high school, that sounds like an enormous opportunity to me. I believe I may have benefited from a program like that back years and years ago when I was a high school student in Phoenix Union High School District. I think it's an absolutely wonderful opportunity for our kids. I think it will help us make sure that the kids who need extra help can get that extra help. I think it'll help us make sure the kids who are already excelling will have something to continue to stimulate their love of learning. So absolutely 100%.
Thank you. Mr. Solon. Oh, I'm sorry. That was the last one. I apologize. Next question. If elected to the board, what position will you take in regards to transgender students being allowed to express their gender identity? Ms. Chilias.
Thank you for the question. I'm so glad that no one saw the face that I just made. To answer the question, again, I'm going to sound like a really broken record. We need to acknowledge the reality of the world that we're living in. It is changing drastically. And so in order to look at the whole student, not just academically, intellectually, and socially, but also developmentally. As a children's librarian, I can tell you that we understand the developmental needs that children will need in order to thrive and be successful in their later on in their lives. They need access to information that can validate their existence and their lived experiences. Denying that will just deny them altogether. So I would just have open arms for this. I have kiddos that come into my branch, and I have conversations, and I happily provide them resources. Same thing I did as a school library assistant at C.E. Rose Library. I honored and I respected their backgrounds. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ekstrom.
We must support and honor our transgender students. They need our support. We must promote kindness and acceptance within our community, and that includes our transgender youth.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez.
I just want to echo what's already been said. For us as human beings, not to recognize that we're all different in one way or the other. We're all God's children. And transgender, LGBTQ, whatever. The old idea of not discriminating against people should be alive and well in our public schools.
Thank you. Mr. Romero.
So, based on this, the focus of the TUSD governing board should be education, not focusing on ideologies. Education needs to be first. If you start implementing different things, you have to look at different grades. Are you going to do this with the younger grades, the middle grades, the higher grades? Whereas education, you're focusing on math, reading, writing, the core things that you need to learn. So I don't believe in focusing on ideologies. I believe I'm focusing on education.
Thank you. Mr. Soland.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm in favor of trans kids. I think that if we need to put education first, the way we need to do that is recognize the uniqueness of every kind of student. I think that when students feel unsafe, when students feel pushed out, when students feel pushed to the margins, it makes it difficult for them to learn. I think that when you create a situation where all of the books that kids are looking at have families that look like Leave It to Beaver, then people who don't have that experience are going to feel like they're other, like they're outside. And they're not going to learn. And they're not going to feel supported. And they're not going to be able to learn their math. They're not going to be able to learn their reading. They're not going to be able to learn their writing and their science. So education first, and that means protect trans kids.
Thank you. Ms. Zapien.
I think that every kid is valid. Every kid matters. Every kid is a critical part of our community. Kids won't be successful if they don't belong. And anything outside of that, or asking kids to not radically belong but not be accommodated, is actually erasure, and nobody will be successful in that. Particularly our most marginalized kids and youth.
Thank you. Next question. How important is accountability, and how can it be exercised as a board member? Ms. Ekstrom.
Accountability is very important. I think we need to hold our superintendent to that standard, and us as a board, we set those priorities. So I fully support having accountability with our superintendent. I also believe that teachers need to be able to express how they feel about their principals and their schools and so on and so forth. So I believe the discussion of accountability and transparency is important as a member of the school board.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez?
If there isn't any question about insisting on accountability, and I'll tell you something else. One of the things that I would not tolerate whatsoever is to give the board misinformation, or to not give information that is relevant. A board member cannot make an informed decision if you don't have the information that you need to have to make one. And so we need to hold everyone accountable, certainly those that are in the top higher echelons of the administration.
Thank you. Mr. Romero.
Yes, accountability is huge, especially as in business. You know, your supervisor holds you accountable to certain things, different things that need to get done. And if they're not being followed and they're not being fixed, then we have some issues, and we need to make sure that we address those and have things in place that if they're not doing as they're told, then there's penalties that are going to be in place, and be able to judge or guess and analyze different situations, like Mr. Gonzalez said, where the board has all the information that they need to make the decision, because without all the pertinent information or leaving something out, we're going to have failed policy or policy that was brought out based on not enough information. So we have to be very cautious and hold everybody at the higher ups at the district, the superintendent and his understaff right below him, very accountable.
Thank you. Mr. Solon.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of accountability. I definitely think we need to hold the superintendent accountable. I want to be held accountable. I think it gives me something to strive for. At any given time, I'm accountable to my client, my supervisor, and the State Bar of Arizona. Sometimes I'm accountable to a judge. I think that gives me something to strive for every day. And I think that's when we're going to succeed the best, is when we do have good information from our superintendent and when the board is held accountable for its actions.
Thank you. Ms. Zapien.
I don't think I have anything to add that everybody else said. I do think that the role of the board is to be accountable to the greater community. I think the superintendent's role is to be accountable to the board. It is a check and balance, whether you're talking about things having to do with budgetary issues, subs, the now closed DSEG order. We are accountable to our greater community, and TUSD is an enormous part of Tucson, and it is our responsibility and accountable to do the best work to reflect what our community needs and wants.
Thank you. Ms. Chilius.
Thank you so much. I would say from a communal perspective, accountability is really huge, especially to members who are invested in this work that revolves around their kids, the constituency, their other colleagues within that work within the district. Without accountability, we have no idea of what we're doing or we're trying to improve. And I also want to add in that transparency is also a huge thing too. Especially, we have to remember that we're working with members from marginalized, disenfranchised communities that have been let down in the past. So we need to acknowledge that working with them and actually showing that we are of good faith, we are working closely with them, and just not having anything against them, keeping them in mind in their needs, will help to further build that, will strengthen really the trust and not distrust. And I'm going to echo a little bit what Mr. Gonzalez had said. We are here to really focus and work more with our populations, and just keep that in mind as we're working with them. Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for 2 more questions. Next question. Do you have ideas to help solve our transportation issues around schools? Mr. Gonzalez.
Could you repeat that question, please?
Do you have ideas to help solve our transportation issues around schools?
Well, I'm not exactly sure how difficult those problems really are. What I do know is that some of our routes are not covered very well. I have a grandchild who has problems getting to school all the time because either the bus that's supposed to pick him up doesn't either pick him up on time or they miss it. But I think it has to do with staffing and planning. So I think we need to get down to the idea of making sure that we plan how that's going to happen, and take a look at the budget to determine if they're understaffed.
Thank you. Mr. Romero.
So in all my education and reading and different things, I did not look into this question. So instead of just trying to feed something out, not knowing what the issues are, whoever wrote that question, if after this meeting, I would love to talk to you and understand what issues we are having, so I can learn from that and be able to have an answer for you next time I'm asked.
Thank you. Mr. Solon?
Yeah, I've heard from people who are having problems with routes constantly changing. I've heard from parents who are having problems because on the first day of school they found out that the bus pickup was going to be in a completely different place than they thought it was going to be. All of this scrambling seems to be a reaction, as Mr. Gonzalez was saying, to a staffing issue. So hiring and retention, hiring and retention, hiring and retention has been a very common theme tonight. And I think part of the problem here is that the state legislature is constantly underfunding our schools, so we don't have enough to go around, which is exactly why we need to make sure that we stop the scam that is coming from the state legislature and the governor to take all this money through the voucher system and funnel it into private schools. You know, schools get funded based on enrollment. If we're losing lots of students, we're not going to get the funding. We're going to have fewer bus drivers. We're going to have fewer bus routes. It's going to take even longer to get our kids to school.
Thank you. Ms. Apien.
I was at the first community meeting with Dr. Trujillo when he first came on board, and I remember sitting in the back of the room watching probably like 20 bus drivers come in and talk about their experience and reminding all of us in the room and humbling us as to how they're the first people that see our kids, they're the last people that see our kids. I remember this same meeting with when Dr. Sanchez started in TUSD. And I think some of this is compounded by the pandemic. We're bleeding money. We're already at a loss. So not only is it needing more bus drivers, but paying them better, serving our community better. This has been a long time issue. It's not something new. It's actually getting worse.
Thank you. Ms. Chilius.
Thank you so much. So I took notes from the July 26th governing board meeting. And so at that meeting in particular, there was a parent, a concerned parent, who actually articulated her grievance.
Sorry.
Sorry. Must like me. Anyway, the concerned parent from that meeting articulated her concern that her child has a bus stop that is not safe for them to cross to get to the school bus. And apparently this has been an ongoing issue. So I would say just really working with our parents and also just working with them, working alongside them, actually hearing them and take that feedback, and so that way we can be strategic in how we can move about addressing this issue. And also, again, the salary shortage. If we can remedy that, we'll have more bus drivers that are more willing, because there are qualified drivers to drive buses in the district. It's just dealing with the salary shortage that we're experiencing right now. There's no staff shortage. So if we have a look at that, as well as working with our parents, we'll be able to achieve something. Thank you very much.
Ms. Ekstrom.
Of course, getting children to school is the most important thing that bus drivers do, and keeping them safe. So we need to make sure that we're respecting bus drivers, we're paying bus drivers. TUSD communication to its parents is a huge problem. And I think if we fix communication within TUSD and how they communicate to the public, that's a huge start. I would be willing to visit bus routes to see exactly how students have to be there so early in the morning. They're dropped off so late at night. I would like to experience that and see for myself what we could do to improve.
Thank you. In the interest of time, we are going to go ahead and make that our last question and allow our candidates to do their 60-second closing statements. Ms. Zapien, would you like to start?
Oh, okay. I'm
going a little
used to
back.
going last of the Z.
You get to go first this time.
This has been my life's work. I've been in classrooms approximately 30 years. I will continue to be in classrooms. I love working with children, teachers, educators who are coming into the profession, and I would like to be able to give the experience to kids in school and students, youth, whatever age range we're talking about, the ability to engage in meaningful learning. That doesn't include standardized testing. That doesn't include a pipeline that is into the workforce. That includes the ability to think creatively and connect with things that they want to do in the world to be whole, competent human beings.
Thank you. Mr. Soland.
Oh, we're going backwards. Okay.
We are.
All right.
Yes,
Thank
we
you.
are.
Thank you again to everyone for being here. It means a lot to TUSD and to all of us candidates who are going to be on the back of the ballot to have you all learning about this race. As I said earlier, if there had been people there to support my clients when they were young, a lot of them would never have been facing criminal charges. We need to dismantle the school-to-prison pipeline that disproportionately affects children of color, indigenous children, children with disabilities. Additionally, as a father, I want to make sure we protect all of our kids. One thing that with the regard to representation, if other kids aren't seeing trans students in the literature that they read, if other kids aren't seeing gay families in the literature that they read, that erases them, as Ms. Appian said, and that leads to bullying. So if we want to stop bullying, we need to make sure our kids know that they're accepted. And finally, we need to keep learning fun. Kids soak up so much. Anyone who's ever accidentally sworn in front of a kindergartner knows that. So we need to make learning a good place where arts,
Thank you.
theater, and music are essentials, not luxuries.
Thank you. Mr. Romero.
So the unfortunate thing is, again, Arizona public school systems rank worst in the United States. That's a problem that we have with what we're doing for our community. I'm not happy with that. I don't think anybody else here should be happy about that. What are we doing about that? Are we going to elect people on the board that are going to change this? It's not going to happen overnight. If we don't start doing something, we're going to be at the bottom of the barrel. So I need to focus on education. We need to get out of this terrible place that we're at. And if people aren't going to fight on the board, we're going to continue to have exactly what we're duplicating. We're going to continue if we keep doing the same thing over and over again. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez.
Well, look, I have a deep passion for student success. And everything we do, we ought to do because it's best for students. No personal agendas, no going out there as board members and trying to take a bite of each other instead of dividing a piece of the pie. I believe that we need to work together. We need to find solutions to the problems that we have. The TUSD is not as bad as some of us criticize it to be. There are some good things happening at TUSD as well. So we need to take those and we need to improve upon them. There's always room for improvement. And I will tell you this in my final statement here. Any one of these individuals who are up here looking to get on the board, I believe have a passion similar to what I have. And I'll tell you what, if I'm elected, I'll be happy to serve with any one of them.
Thank you. Ms. Ekstrom.
First, I would like to thank the League of Women Voters and the YWCA for hosting us. I am a TUSD parent. I am a community member. I would like to create meaningful change in TUSD and to work with our community to make that happen. I'm ready to work on day one, and I'm ready to collaborate with any one of these people up here and the current board. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Chilius.
Thank you so much. I just want to say thank you so much for having us here, and just being a part of this forum means a lot, and so people can know who the candidates are. I'm just going to keep it brief. I did not ask to do this. It just fell in my lap, yet I'm here. I'm doing this for my kids. Sorry. I did not want to leave my kids from CE Rose because I was their librarian since the pandemic hit. And so I couldn't stay because of the existing deficiency that the district cannot equitably pay their teachers or professional development incentives or promotional opportunities to help their staff or retain them. So in short, I'm doing this for my kids, and I'm giving this students at CE Rose a special gift if I'm elected, so that way another school library assistant will never have to experience the same heartbreak that I experienced.
Thank you. And now you can clap. Thank you all very much for attending. For everybody. Thank you again to the candidates for taking the time out to share your opinions and your philosophies and your positions with the audience. And thank you all for spending your evening with us. Vote, and remind your neighbors to vote. Good evening.